Thank you so much for checking out our podcast. You're watching the extended cut video version of the podcast. We still edit down the audio, but we wanted to provide a video version. We've been doing this for several months now, and the video versions are as much as 45 minutes longer than the audio versions. A lot of uncut banter between me and Calvin to start and end the episodes. I think a lot of valuable content that we usually cut out, so the edited version is a little bit shorter. But yeah, so thanks so much for checking out the show. If you'd like to check out old episodes, you can hop on over to letgoddie.com. If you like the show and value what we're doing, it would be a huge help if you'd share the episode. And also on the website, we have a support tab. If you'd like to pledge as little as $1 a month, it would help us continue what we're doing. Thank you so much for checking out the show and supporting us in sharing the stories of God at work. This is a Let God Die podcast. I am Josh.
And I am Calvin.
And we're doing some reposts of old episodes. I'm working on a different project that I've wanted to work on for many years that I actually started about 12 years ago and then shelved for 12 years. And I just feel like I need to step aside from some things and focus on it. So we're doing these reposts of episodes that have had a big impact on Calvin and myself. If you want to keep up on past episodes, past projects, actually, that are not active that I've done in the past, some of the current ones and some of the future stuff, you can head over to bit.ly/mozugmedia. So that's bit.ly/mozugmedia. So it's kind of just a hub for the different projects that I've done throughout the years, some that are more shameful than others. And yeah, so one thing that we're doing with these reposts, with the video portion, if you're watching right now, we weren't recording video back when we recorded these episodes. So we're actually going to be very distractingly so posting silent films over the audio. So I don't know if you don't want to hear us, but you want to watch a movie. That'd be cool. But hopefully you listen to the stories more than you're distracted by the video, by the visuals. But you know, what can you do? We did this to ourselves, I guess. So the one that I wanted to focus on today was episode 42. It was with Jesse Campbell. Jesse is a cousin of mine, and I think we've done 3 or 4 episodes with him. The guy's he just has such a heart for people and such a heart for God, and so many things that he said have made a huge impact on my life. So this one in particular, this episode was really special. We called it Obedience Beyond Discouragement. And yeah, I'm not going to get into like the details of the stories, but there are a couple stories that he had shared with me years back that he actually said like, hey, this is just something I want to share between us. You know, he asked me not to share. But basically just times that he has been obedient to what he believed that God was calling him to do, but there's total backfiring and things did not go remotely close to what he had hoped. And yeah, there was a point in time that I came to him and I just said like, hey, I know that this isn't something that you wanted me to even like share with people, but like, would you, like, it's been some time and I think it would be valuable to share that story on the podcast. You know, no pressure, but he actually did agree to, and I don't know, it just, that's one that sticks with me majorly, is just, you know, that the purpose of our obedience is not to see a result, and often it's for our own growth, it's for our maturity, and that can be crazy hecka difficult, especially when we're just like, all right, like why in the world would you lead me to do that, God, if it was going to blow up in my face, you know? I think for most of us who have been following God for any length of time, that's probably happened at least once. And I don't know, I would go so bold as to say if it hasn't happened, maybe you've been disobedient. Like, I don't know, maybe that's not fair to say. I just feel like with my personal experience, oftentimes, God calls me not to just play it safe and do the thing that will result in immediate change or obvious change, but there are times that I don't know. I've been left with like, all right, that was a fail. But in reality, trusting that does not mean that, oh, I must have heard God wrong. But it's more so him, refining us in that process. And just like, all right, like, yeah, you were obedient, and just because you perceived it as a fail does not mean that I'm not using it behind the scenes.
Right.
So yeah, this is one that stayed with me big time.
Yeah, like I feel like we often forget that like following Jesus, if we're really doing it, like is gonna come at a cost at some point. And sometimes that cost is a lot higher than we anticipate.
Yeah.
Sometimes that cost could come at the I guess the breaking up of friendships, the loss of relationships. It could come at the cost of a loss of a job. For one of the guys recently who's been in our community, he ministers a lot on the job, and he was recently let go for that reason, because he chose to obey the Lord, and he was making like close to 6 figures. So he's now in a place where he's having to rebuild from the ground up, like what the Lord wants of his life now. And like for me, like just thinking about Sean is like so inspiring to know that there are people who are still willing to like follow Jesus, even if it means that in the moment they seem like they're going destitute or they seem like they're going without. If anything, it's always just like a minor setback for a major come up, because there's no losses in the kingdom. And even for me, I have to remind myself of that every time. Anything that we lay down before the Lord, like he honors the desires of our hearts when we decide to be faithful with what he's given us. Like if he gives us a crown and we lay it back down at his feet and say, Lord, this is yours, it belongs to you. Like he honors it and he'll exalt it, but it looks the way that he wants it to look. It doesn't look the way that we want it to look. And I think that's hard to reconcile sometimes. But like Jesse's talk, dude, so good. Like that episode was really, really good. It brought a lot of perspective to me too, to like continue to stay the course, even if it looks like there's a dead end coming.
Yeah.
To know that the Lord is going to make a way.
Yeah, and for him it was not necessarily like a cost or a loss, but it was I guess humiliation, and I'm not gonna give away the story, but I think it needs to be heard, and I think these types of conversations need to happen. So this is Jesse Campbell, episode 42, Obedience Beyond Discouragement. We'll be back next time with one of Calvin's choices. We're actually having a repeat guest on today, Jesse Campbell. He is a cousin of mine, one of my best friends, and he's had a huge impact on my walk with Christ. And he actually shared a story with me in confidence quite a few years back. And I know at the time he just kind of shared it one-on-one with me. But recently I had actually asked if he'd be willing to share that for the podcast, which I wasn't really sure if he'd be willing to or not. But he agreed to, and I'm really excited for it. So we're going to call him and hop right into it.
What's up?
Not too
cousin
much.
Jess.
Hey, brothers. I'm good.
So we don't have a visual on Calvin, but he looks similar to what he looked like last time.
Okay.
Probably plus a septum ring. I got my nose pierced. Put another hole in my face.
Yeah. He lost about 85 pounds. So.
Whoa.
So.
I don't think he'll be alive.
Yeah. So Calvin, Jesse has a baby on the way.
Dude, congratulations, man.
Thank you, brother.
How far along is your wife?
Dude, she's only has like a little over a month left. She's due September 4th.
Oh, dude, lucky. September birthday. Mine's the 24th.
What did you just say?
My birthday is September 24th.
My birthday is September 24th, Calvin.
Are you trying to tell me that you guys are twins?
We are twins.
We are twins. Except
No way.
I was born in 82.
Yeah, 88, man. So there's a bit of distance between us, but still.
Hey. What?
What is my life? I'm honored to share it with you, Jesse.
I'm honored to share it with you, man. I remember when I was just about, 5-6 years old, changing your diapers. Just kidding. What the heck?
The weirdest thing ever. All right, so Jesse, this is the third podcast we've had him on. But yeah, so as you guys may know if you heard the last one, me and Jesse went to Uganda together, 5 years ago now, I think?
Yeah, 5 years.
And Jesse had actually gone to Uganda by himself a couple years beforehand. Jesse, do you want to share the story of how you got connected up with Pastor Eddie in Uganda?
Sure. So we started sponsoring a child just online at the time. It was right before Facebook, so it was MySpace that we connected on. And he just said that he finds sponsorship for kids in his this little rural area that he was in. He's not connected to a big ministry. So if I'm interested, please consider sponsoring one. So I said, yeah, man, I'll sponsor one. And then I started sponsoring them. He sent me the picture, and I kind of doubted whether the kid was real or he was really getting the money I was sending him, because it was such a small ministry. It wasn't, so I didn't know about their accountability or anything.
And how did you connect with him in the first place? Did he randomly message you, or like?
I watched a video on MySpace about kids in Africa that were a part of the Invisible Children, and that was going on in Uganda. And I had purchased a CD or DVD and a shirt, Invisible Children shirt, to help that ministry after watching the video on there. And then I commented below on their MySpace account that I had received my stuff, and I wish them the best of luck and over there in Uganda. And then that the pastor that Pastor Eddie was friends with them also seen my comment and just asked me to be friends. Hey, I'm a pastor in Uganda. And it seemed kind of real random to me at the time, but I was like, okay, this guy's probably just another one of the people trying to get money out of you or whatever. But I thought, I'll give him a shot to prove that he's not. So it ended up being amazing what came out of it. But so that's how we originally met.
I remember just thinking at the time, like, I had never really heard you talk about wanting to go on a missions trip or anything like that. So especially to go to a country by yourself to meet a guy that you had never met or had any connections with, I was just like, oh, this is going to be pretty wild.
Oh, yeah. It was wild. Everybody, even at work, thought I was nuts, man. I remember just being on the assembly line at Nissan on night shift, and everyone talking about where they're going on vacation. And they asked me where I was going, and I said, well, I'm going to Uganda, man. It's a small country in Africa. And they all laughed, and they were just like, seriously, man, where are you going, Florida? And I said, no, man, I'm serious. We started sponsoring this kid, and I want to go over there and see if he's real or not before I sink any real money into this ministry to help this guy out. He says he needs a lot. So I wanted God to show me in a supernatural way. I had heard of, God doing things like supernaturally, like just finances to pay for people's mission trips and stuff like that. So I just basically prayed, Lord, if it's your will for me to go to Uganda and go meet this guy, then could you pay for my plane ticket separate from my bank account? And I'll take some money with me also, but that'll show me, that you're with me, you really want me to go, and that this is you and not just, something I want to do. So not long after I prayed that, a guy at my work just asked me randomly if I knew anybody that wanted to buy his pickup truck. And I knew the truck because we had drove it to work several times. I carpooled with him. And so I offered him $1,900 for it and asked him if he didn't mind if I resold it. And he didn't know anything about me wanting to go on a trip or anything. But so he said, yeah, I think I could take that for it. So he took $19 for it. And I didn't have to even pay taxes. We filled out a gift form because I knew the person at the DMV. So anyways, I had 19 into it total. And I prayed this prayer, very specific prayer. I said, Lord, if it's your will for me to go to Uganda, let me double my money on this truck. And I really felt like that God wanted me to not put the truck on Craigslist for a high amount. expecting people to talk me down. So I just put it on there for 3,800, exactly double. Actually, just a few minutes after I posted the ad, someone called, but I met with the guy the next day, and he just handed me 38 $100 bills, didn't talk me down one dime for the truck. What kind of freaked me out about it, about praying that, is when I went to purchase my plane ticket, it was $1,900 exactly. So I was like, whoa, I'm going to Uganda, man. So that was one of the ways that God showed me that it is Him that is behind wanting to hook me up with this pastor over overseas to start something.
So you didn't even like price out plane tickets and know that you needed to double the price? It was just like that was just like on your heart?
Yeah, it was just on my heart. I mean, I didn't know that it would be exactly that amount. I Googled like how much tickets would be over there, and it said ranging from this to this, but I didn't know that it would be that very specific amount. No. The story goes, man, I went over, and I really just was full of skepticism. I thought that, things like this were just that it was all just full of crap. I just thought, well, if this isn't real, and this kid isn't, and I tested the ministry. I sent the child a package for Christmas, knowing that I'd go there in the summer, that coming up summer, and I sent him some shoes and some clothes and different things for his school. And then I asked the pastor if he got them. He said, yeah. So when I got there, I said, hey, I want to go meet the child that I sponsor. Wegelo is his name. And he said, sure, we'll go in the morning. So I got there, and I said, I couldn't believe it was the kid in the picture, man. I was just like having that moment like, whoa, this kid is real. So anyways, I asked him if he got the stuff I sent him. Dude, he had everything I sent him. So he brought it out. He had his shoes. He had his everything. So anyways, it was a really cool moment where I was kind of just humbled by God's presence in that moment, that he was showing me that the guy was, his accountability was right on. And everything just grew from there, really. I videotaped the needs they had, and flew back to the United States, asked you, Josh, to help me put together a DVD that we could use to help fundraise for these people. And I was praying, I was like, Lord, I've never done anything like this, man. I do not even know where to start fundraising money or anything like that. So just please show me, guide me on how to do it. And because, dude, when I was over there, I just seen the craziest scenes, man, just like you see on these commercials that show kids like just malnourished and just skin and bone, and just the whole, exactly like you see it, man. It's just like that. And I was like, I can't believe I'm one of these guys that are like trying to raise money for this cause. I can't believe I like turned into that dude that I was like so skeptic of. So anyways, it was cool, and we used the DVD you made, and as you know, we flew the pastor over here to the United States, and he stayed with us for almost a month, and we raised up 10 grand for him in 1 month. And I told him, I said, Pastor Eddie, I said, you don't know how much trust I'm putting in you, that you will build the school, the Christian school for the kids, and where a place for them to sleep, the ones that don't have a place in the school, that they could stay there, the ones that don't have a home. I say, you don't realize how much trust I'm putting in you. These are my friends, my family. This is money that me and my wife, and that whole trip was crazy, because our goal, when he got here, I said, well, let's pray right now on your first night here. Let's set a goal of what you want to raise when you're here. He said $10,000. And I said, well, it's Christmas time. It's 2008, about to be 2009. And I said, it's not the best economic times here. And I said, but I tell you what, I paid for your plane ticket, and I'll put 1,000 in. And I said, but that's all I'm doing. I'm not going to fill the gap at the end and say it was God.
Yeah.
I said, if it's God, it's just going to be God. And so, man, I learned a lot through that too, because it was about a week before he left, and we only had like 3 grand, I think. And the last week, it was like God was testing our faith or something. But the last week, someone who couldn't give at the time, but had just a awesome heart of love for what we were doing and for the kids and stuff. And this person could have just said, nothing. Could have just said, I can't give, sorry. But instead, she said, I can't give, but I know someone who adopted children from Africa, and I'm gonna call them. They own a business, and they might be interested in giving. So she made that call, man. And if she wouldn't have made that call, then the money that come from that wouldn't have happened. But so we go to this guy's house that she called, and he said, I want you to tell me everything you just told me again, just like you just did, with the DVD of what you taped over there, meeting the child, seeing that everything's legit, all their needs, everything. But come back tomorrow night and do the same thing, same house, my house right here. And I said, okay. And so I came back, and the house is, got a lot of cars outside, and he had called other people who own businesses and different businessmen. And dude, the bulk of the money came in that from that setting. It's like $4 or $5 grand just from that one person who couldn't give, making that call to somebody who she thought could. So many lessons, man, about how that money came in that I just learned too, man. It was crazy, because one pastor, he said, we're going to give what we can. And this was, I drove him, up north, and we were at a church up there, and he said, we're going to give what we can, but I want to tell you something that I've learned in ministry. And he said that you're probably learning right now, and that's, if you thought it, you bought it. And at first, you could take offense to that real quick, but I didn't. The Lord was like, no, you need to listen. And I felt like God was just telling me to listen to what you're hearing. And he was just telling me that, people will do what they can, but don't expect one person to do more than the other. Just take what people have in their heart to give. And when you thought of something, and you can't just put it on someone else to make that happen, that God put in your heart to. And it was an awesome lesson in that. And I could have just thought totally negative toward his comment, but I didn't, man. And God really showed me some things through it. But sure enough, man, we had the last check needed to come in, and it was time for Eddie to go home, and he missed his flight. They wouldn't let him on the plane. His passport was messed up, and we were like all stressed about it. And so one more check was supposed to come in before he left, and it didn't come in yet. But since that happened and he couldn't leave, the last check ended up coming in for exactly $1,500, and before that we had $8,500. So it was down to the dollar. It was 10 grand down to the dollar before he left, just like we prayed. And he built up what he said he would. And our second trip was with Josh, and that was pretty much to show what had been done with everyone's money, and that the accountability of this ministry is, their core is their accountability, and that every dollar, every cent, every receipt would add up to the 10 grand. And it did. He did exactly what he said.
Built a whole school, a whole church in the villages.
He did, yeah. Mm-hmm. He did, man. And that's part of the reason I wanted to video that on our second trip, was to show everybody that what they contributed to happen. And that was really important to me.
We went into one of the villages, and me and Jesse were on the little tiny motorbike with Eddie that we almost died on multiple times, and it was really terrifying. But that's how they get around all the time. But we went to this like big building that was like brick, and like, so it's like in one of the villages. Eddie just like kind of casually remarked that it was a church or something. And Jesse said something like, wait a second, like your church. Because you said before it was just like a wood hut, like wood and mud hut that you guys were getting rained on during service. Yeah, Jesse was just like, wait a second, like how in the world did this come to be? But Eddie was just like, yeah, there was like an anonymous donor like in the area or something who wanted to see a church built for the ministry that was happening there. So that was really cool, like in a number of ways. For one, like considering that Jesse had been there before, and like they didn't have any structure whatsoever. And I think also, I mean, to me, it kind of struck me that like there were other people that were investing into the ministry that Eddie was doing, you know?
Yeah, without us even knowing. So that completely blew my mind, man, because when first time I was there, like you said, it was just sticks and mud, their church. So this is two totally separate buildings we're talking about. So the first one that the 10 grand was raised for was put up in about 15 miles from the original church, because it was the poorest district and it needed it the most. And so Pastor Eddie is the lead pastor over the two churches, but his original church that I went to was just sticks and mud, man. And we were putting a tin roof on it and just some straw and stuff on the side. And he said when it rains, the rain will find us there, and it rains on us and stuff. So yeah, like you said, when we went, I was like, hold on, man, how in the world did this huge brick church get built right here? The last time I was standing right here, it was sticks and mud. I remember this place there, the small little church I remember is right over there. It's just sticks. He basically said that someone anonymous wanted to build that church and did not, and whatever he did not want him to reveal who he was. So I still don't know this day if it was one person or a group of people that he met when he was here or what happened. But from the trip, from somehow, some way, from that trip, someone connected with him and was in connection with him on Facebook. And if you remember, Josh, the well that was at the orphanage, the $10,000 structure, the well that was there was $2,500 donated from one person that we still don't know who had done it.
All right.
That was some crazy things that, it just goes to show that, if God's calling you to do something, just do your part, man. You don't have to, the whole responsibility of that happening is not solely on you. If it's God, then he's going to be God. Let him be God, let him do what he does. And stop taking it all upon yourself,
Mm-hmm.
That's so cool, because it's not like they're trying to get the notoriety or the righteousness points per se for putting the structure together, donating X amount of dollars, but more about the people that's actually going to help and the ways the Lord could use it. Just being yielded in that type of way is awesome to me. I'm always blown away by people who are just generous like that, and I'm just wish it could be me. But in a way, I'm totally cool with that. Maybe one day, who knows? But that, I'm always kind of blown back by people who are able to do things like that and who choose to, selflessly. That's awesome.
Amen, man.
A lot of what you've been talking about has been just blind obedience almost, just following what God has to say. One story that comes to mind from your first trip out there, you shared with me just at the time, in confidence. I remember you even just saying I don't really want you to share this story with anybody. It was just a really discouraging experience. And I remember you even just kind of struggling with where to fit that in your walk at the time. And you know what I'm talking about, but do you want to kind of share that?
Sure. So when I was in Uganda the first time, having experienced some of the power of God getting me there, and just the way the plane ticket came, and just a lot of different things, and having seen God do amazing things, I thought I really have it in my heart to pray for people when I'm there also. And so when we were there, they brought to me this blind man, and it was in a setting where we were handing out food, so there was tons of people there, and all of a sudden they bring this blind man's there in front of me, and he said he wants prayer, and I asked what do you want God to do for you, and he of course says I want to see. And I just was thinking of the scripture of God with the mud and everything, smearing the mud on a guy's eyes, and Jesus opening up the eyes of the blind. So I thought, well, I wouldn't be in this situation if that's not what he wanted. So I prayed for this guy publicly for Jesus to open his eyes up, and and it didn't happen, man. And there was even laughter in the crowd whenever he opened his eyes, and he was still blind. I went back to Pastor Eddie's that night, and it takes a whole lot to uh, catch for you to catch me with tears, but I, I'm not a person. I'm not one of those emotional guys or whatever. But that night I was, man, and it was, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Why didn't it happen? Why? And and what God showed me through it, man, and He showed me this in time, but it was almost like there was stages of me understanding, and by the time I got to like the last stage of me understanding, it's like I couldn't hop to, if understanding why was like stage 5, I couldn't hop straight to stage 5. I wouldn't accept it. I wouldn't even know how to deal with it. So I had to understand slowly, so it was a process and basically what came out of it was God showed me that I don't have to understand everything, and that if I waste my time and focus trying to understand one thing and letting it bother me so bad, that I'll become blind to everything that God is doing, everything that He has done, and everything that's going on around me, and how He's using me right now, and how it can actually hinder me from doing what He originally wanted to use me to do, something that my gifts are in, rather than trying to, want someone else's gift, or wanting something to happen so bad that it stops everything else that He's trying to do through me. So really just, sometimes the best answer is no answer. You know what I mean? And what I mean by that is like if He would have originally just said, well, you didn't have enough faith, that's it, because that's what was on my mind the whole time, and I had seen so many different little things happen, and prayers answered, like very specific things, that I was like the crazy Christian that, and I still am to a point, that you never know what I'm gonna do. Like I could pray for some dude that's blind. I could pray for somebody who's paralyzed, or I could walk by 100 people like that, just like that, and not ever. But if I feel faith rising up in me, and I feel just the passion and the hurt that person's going through, and I will pray for that person. I don't care how it makes me look, man. And I'm still like that to this day, but I'm a little more cautious, but I'm not to the point where it's going to stop me, So God really showed me that I don't have to have everything figured out. That's it's not why I'm here. I'm not here to have a 3-year-old conversation with God. Why all the days of my life. That's not why I'm on the earth. I'm not here to figure out everything, because that's if you live your life like that as a Christian, then you'll find yourself, everybody's so different. You could be wanting to know why, the moon's up there. Why do we even need it? Why not just do that? Why about the dinosaurs? Why don't you talk more about it in the Bible? Why not? Why does God have to, if He was defining everything in a book, I mean, absolutely everything, the book would be stacked from here to the moon, that's not why we're here. And just to be able to come to a place in my walk with Him to not have to figure everything out, and accept that my gifts are what they are, and not to let something not happening stop my walk, is really what came out of it. So
Wow.
So, looking back, I don't know if this is even a thought that you have. I don't think that it's hugely important, but either way, I'm going to ask. Looking back on that situation, do you still believe that God was calling you to pray for healing for that man?
Mm, man, that's a tough one. If I could do it all over again, I always told myself that like that was my one of my biggest regrets. I wish I never would have opened my mouth, but that's what I thought then, right after it happened, and I was very frustrated with God and stuff. And until God, I was learning and maturing in my walk with Him too. So uh, now I think that He did want me to pray for that guy, partly because of um, you know I don't mean not, of course, not to get that guy's hopes up. Maybe he did want to use me to heal that man, and maybe maybe I was just that close to having the faith to have that done. Maybe that is the case. But if not, and if so, either way, I know God was trying to bring me to the perspective I have now, regardless of whether it had been that guy that I was praying for or someone else. Because, I mean, this is not easy to say, but I've prayed over dead bodies, man. I have, and I've seen some wild things happen that you would not believe unless you were there with me, and that a lot of things that I don't talk about just because I know that coming from someone else's perspective, they just would be so full of doubt and unbelief about it that I just don't speak about it. But even that dead body didn't wake up. But if all the small things and different things that God, not small, some big, but some things that God has done has made me that crazy Christian that is just had just enough happen to him personally that he knows the healing power of God is for us. It's for today. It's for us to pray over people. And people that don't believe in healings, man, all I can say to someone that don't believe in healings is once you've experienced one, you don't care what anyone thinks. You don't care what I don't care how religious somebody might be, how much they might know about the Bible. I don't care because I personally had a pastor pray for me, a pastor named Jeff Jansen. He prayed for me for my neck. I had a really bad pinched nerve in my neck that would come and go every so often. And when it came, it was so bad that I would just throw up my food because my stomach wouldn't even let me digest my food. I was in so much pain, and guys at work would just be laughing because I'd have to I couldn't move my neck, so I had to turn my whole body to turn and face them to talk. So I looked like a little robot dude. So, but I was in so much pain, man, and being a leader and being used to praying for people, I was just super stubborn and never asked for prayer myself. And I was at a meeting with Jeff Jansen down in Alabama, and I had just thrown up a bunch of food that we had just ate. We just went out to eat, and I threw it up, man, because I was in so much pain. And I mean, it would almost bring you to tears how much pain I was in. I had been to a chiropractor, I had been to, just different people to see what the heck's wrong with me, and they said it was a pinched nerve, man, in your neck. And anyways, he prayed for me, man, and I experienced God's healing power. I have not had that pain or a pinched nerve in my neck ever since then, and that's been about 5 years. So
Come on, man.
knowing and experiencing it as often as it would come, and knowing how periodic it was every so many months, and that just bracing myself for it and it not coming ever again at all. I mean, to the point to where I feel like a 16-year-old again in my neck. I just That's just one of the many ways that I experience God's power, and the different things I've prayed that's happened, man. It's just wild answered prayers that are very specific. Like once you experience some, I mean, you just don't care what anybody thinks. You'll see when you get. All I got to tell people that don't believe is just you'll see when you get to heaven that you had power here on the earth to pray and to make things happen in Jesus' name, and have God's power work through you. And whether you believed it or not, that's just the truth. And so anyways, I've experienced just enough to make me that crazy unpredictable dude that you just
Dude, that's totally tight though.
you don't know
I mean,
what
like
you're gonna do.
like you said, man, like until you experience a miracle, like you'll always be skeptical. But once you actually experience a miracle where like you just know it's Jesus and no one else, like it gives you crazy faith for crazy things. And like like you said, with you praying over the dead bodies and things like that, like, dude, I'm not gonna even lie, I've thought about it plenty of times. Like how cool would that be? Like if I was at a funeral and like just got together and just had the faith that, like Jesus could raise people from the dead. Like if the Spirit of Christ that raised him from the dead lives in me, like why wouldn't I be able to do the same thing? And I prayed over this person, they woke up and someone got their grandmother or parent back. Like I've thought about that. I've entertained that thought for a while. And like a lot of people would think that that's crazy, but that's also stuff that Jesus did. And I think it kind of shows the fact that you believe that Jesus was who he said he was. And I don't think even in the miracle not happening or taking place in a way we think it should, that goes to show like you being naive, but you just simply like, hey, well, like, Father, I know who you are and you can do what you want to do, but I'm in agreement with what you want to do. So even if this doesn't happen, like, it doesn't take faith away from me at all. Like, you're able to do what you want, but if you want to raise this person, you could do it.
Amen. That's right. Put it on him. It is his power. So just if he wants to do it, he can. So you said it perfectly right there, Calvin.
When it comes down to it, like God being glorified, there's part of me that like when there is prayer for something like specific and someone very much believes that God's going to do it and it doesn't happen, but that doesn't shake their faith, to me that's like testament to the fact that like they truly do believe that God is able, and they're not just putting their whole faith on like whether or not God will pull through in the way that they thought. That glorifies God in a major way.
Yeah.
And like you said with that situation for yourself, like just God teaching you something that was crazy valuable in a way that, I mean, he could have taught you that in any number of other ways, but like using that specific thing to like really set it in a very meaningful way, probably just more so than had it been, taught by different means.
I also experienced like really needing other people to give me the grace that I've given so many people that I've seen pray for people, whether it be, praying for somebody to be healed right then, or just praying in general for this to happen or this sick person to not, die and then they die. Just different things that have happened in my, I've seen and experienced in my own life. And I think that was a humbling experience too, that I needed the grace that I had, given so many people throughout the years, and when you're in need of that, and and you're just hoping that people give you that same grace and forgiveness too, because that guy had his own feelings and his own expectations and hopes, and all he knew was a voice was here, from a distant land to pray over him, and just knowing what was going through his mind was part of the biggest part. That's the biggest thing that hurt really hurt, like really tore me up at night when I got back was, I can deal with someone laughing at me. I mean, who cares? Who cares? I'm not going to see them people ever again. You know what I mean? I'm not there for, it wasn't the rejection per se. The largest percentage of it wasn't, you know what I mean? But knowing what that person was expecting by my words, and that I felt like I let them down, my faith let them down, my faith failed. So that's what really got to me, and that's what really, I think that's what I've really grown in, is not to let that be, not to let that be affected so much, and not to have to protect it to the point where I won't open my mouth and pray for anybody anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I feel like sometimes too that the Father even like, because I mean in the Bible Jesus says like according to our faith it shall be done unto us. Mm-hmm. I feel like sometimes the Father actually tests us to see like what we will actually believe him for, whether or not he actually moves on it. But like do you have the faith to believe me for this? He's like, yeah, well, I'm going to step out and pray for it. And even if nothing happens, like, Lord, I believed you for it. Like, I don't think that goes in vain. I'm saying I think a lot. I know I'm saying that, but I don't know. I have a hard time feeling like the Father's like disapproved at us for actually stepping out on. Well, we would expect him to move on.
I agree with that, man. I know that if you say, I have faith for this, then he'll let you test it, And I know even a few weeks ago, some guy, one of my friends at work, was just saying, be careful when you pray for patience, because I've been praying for it, and man, listen to this that happened to me. He put me in a situation where I needed extreme patience, or I would have failed miserably.
Yeah,
But
man.
it was just like on the road or something. But he was just saying it's funny how when you pray for things and then you find yourself in the very situation to test what he's trying to work with you in. And so yeah, man, if you believe that, then he's gonna let you be in a situation to, to put your faith out there,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I thought about like with what you're saying, Calvin, the story in Daniel about like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego.
Dude,
when they're
favorite.
Yeah, when they're about to be like burned in the furnace, they're saying, like we believe that God will deliver us out of your hand. Daniel 3:18. But even if he does not, let it be known that we are not going to serve your gods or worship the golden image that you have set up. And yeah, I don't know, just like having that heart of, yeah, I totally believe that Jesus will heal this guy, but even if he doesn't, like I believe, it doesn't change the fact that I believe that he's able and that he's good and that he's glorified and that he still has a plan for that man's life,
Nailed it.
Hey man, drop the mic, dude. It's so funny that funny that you said that, Josh, because I just read the book of Daniel out on my front porch a few weeks ago, and I hadn't read Daniel in like ages, man, years. But so just out of the blue, it's funny that you used that story, but I just read it. So
yeah. So Jesse, I also wanted you to share a different story, seemingly completely unrelated, but in all honesty, I think that they go together very well. And this is something that just kind of clicked with me, where I was just like, man, those two stories that Jesse has really kind of coordinate together. And the cool thing is too, this one, I remember you telling me, I don't know, several years back, I've shared that story with so many people, and like so many people, because it was just like, I think that God spoke to me very clearly through it, and it was just like, I don't know, it was just like some truths about the character of God and what it means to obey, like really said it in a cool way. So I think it just like totally works as an illustration of that. So yeah, I want you to share that, and then we'll kind of dialogue about that.
Okay, yeah. So the story you're talking about is the one that so this happened to me whenever I was on night shift at Nissan yet again, and and I went to get my car serviced at the dealer, and the dealer said that it's gonna take a while to fix this part that you need fixed. So I told him I just got off night shift. I need to get home and get some sleep. How long is it gonna take? So the guy says, this is going to take a while. Do you mind if we have one of our service guys take you home? And we'll call you when the car's ready. And I said, sure. So the guy sends me in a car with a guy to take me home. The dude's name was Chris. I don't know, I forgot his last name, but the guy's first name is Chris. So I'm driving along with Chris, and I really just feel like the unctioning to tell this guy about Jesus and just witness to him. And so I said, hey man, my name's Jesse, what's your name? And he's like, my name's Chris. And I said, well, I said, Chris, this may sound crazy, man. I said, but I really feel like God's just wanting me to tell you about how much he loves you, man, and that he knows your name and he wants you to know him. And I said, do you know who Jesus is? And he said, man, how are you supposed to know who Jesus is? And I said, well, Chris, you can know Jesus just like you know your own mom or dad. I said, if I blindfolded you, man, and set you in a chair and 100 people walked by and spoke to you, if one of them was your mother, you'd know exactly which one just by her voice, wouldn't you? And he said, well, yeah. And I said, well, you can know Jesus just like that, man. I said, when you give your heart to him and you start a relationship with him, I said, you can read his word and know him, know his character and know his voice, what he would tell you to do and what he wouldn't. And he said, man, he started shaking his head, no, And while he's shaking his head, he goes, man, this is some crazy stuff. And I said, why you say that? He said, because some dude at a gas station just approached me the other day with all this Jesus stuff, man, talking all this Jesus stuff while I'm trying to pump gas, coming up to me just like you are now. And I said, really? And he goes, Chris said, yeah, and you know what I told him, man? I told him, I don't want nothing to do with all that Jesus stuff. Go on, man. Leave me alone. And he said it just like that, man. And I started laughing, and I was like, is that what you're going to tell me? And he said, no, man. He said, the way this happened right after that dude, he said, I just know God's got my number, man. He wants me to give my life to him, or whatever you're saying, he wants me to do it. And dude, I was just floored, man. Dude, I was so tired, Josh, that I was like out of it, man. I couldn't believe that this conversation was going my way. Like I just expected him to just sit there and let me, talk the rest of the way. But so anyways, so I was like, well, I said, man, do you know anything about Jesus? And he's like, not really. And I said, well, Jesus already existed before the world began. I said, that's what the Bible says. It says that him and God created the world together. I said, did you know even in the very first book of the Bible in Genesis, I said, it says that God was speaking, and he was speaking with someone, and the person he was speaking with was Jesus, because he said, let's create man in our own image. And I said, you don't talk plurally like that. If you're not talking to somebody, I said, you'd just say, I'm going to create man in my own image. I said, so Jesus existed before the world began. I said, God was speaking to him. He said, let's create man in our own image, after he had already created the earth. I said, and then later on in Scripture, it specifically says in the New Testament that Jesus existed before Abraham even existed, a guy that obviously existed thousands of years before him, and or hundreds of years before him. So I just told him about how Jesus already existed, and he's God's son. And I said, so God had one son just like himself, and when a God has a child, what does that make him? If a human has a baby, he's a human, right? And he's like, yeah. And I said, so Jesus is just like God, a God just like God. I said, and he's that big, right? And I said, and then he came into a human body, the one we read about in the Bible, the one named Jesus. I said, he came into a human body on this earth to take on your sins upon himself. And I said, and if you believe in that, if you believe what I'm telling you right now, that Jesus became human, he already existed in the spirit. He was already spirit, just like God, co-creating the earth, watching mankind fall into sin, the whole 9 yards. And then he came to the earth in a human body, and just like a man, to prove that he could live on this earth without sin, yet take all the sin and the punishment of man upon himself. I said that was God's plan to renew the relationship between man and God. I said, if you believe this, man, you believe that Jesus is God's son, then you can have eternal life in you right now, Chris, starting today. At this time, we were already parked in my driveway, and we had just sitting there, and he's just listening to everything, just looking down. And I said, I finished up about the story about Christ, but I basically told him what he did. He died and rose again, and that it was eyewitnessed by not just tens of thousands of people, but hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people eyewitnessed Jesus doing all the miracles that the Bible says he did. And I said, and to legitimize the Bible, Chris, I said, the best witness to something is an eyewitness. If someone eyewitnesses something and you got an eyewitness in court, man, that dude's done, man. That's as good as it gets. So since it was eyewitnessed by so many people, it couldn't be denied. What he had done couldn't be denied. I said, so did you know even the people that hated Jesus, that couldn't stand that he would call himself the Son of God, and even the people that hated his guts, Chris, I said, never denied that he done the miracles he done, because they couldn't. They seen them happen. So when they all wrote about it, they said that the people that hated him just started saying, well, maybe he's the devil or something. I don't know how he does it. So I said, but he proved that he was the Son of God in front of everybody. And I said, if you believe that, then you can pray with me right now, and it's about what's going on in your heart right now, Chris. It's not about the words that we're about to say, unless you mean them in your heart. And so he said, I want to do it. I want to pray with you, and I believe it. And dude, it was just like it was like a perfect scenario. I could tell you 100 stories right now about how it did not go my way. I mean, crazy thing. I'm talking about crazy responses. But this one was like perfect God moment. Everything fell in line. Everything come out of my mouth right. I mean, I was just like, wow, that just happened. How am I going to go to sleep now? I was all excited. So I went upstairs. And got him a study Bible, and that I had a student study Bible, and I gave it to him, prayed over him, and he shook my hand and gave me a half hug, as much as someone can hug you in a car. And that was the last time I ever seen him, man. But what came from what was so awesome about that, and rewinding a little bit about the guy at the gas station, and I think that what your take out of it was also, Josh, is what's so cool is the scripture that says one person plants and another waters, but God makes the seed grow. God's the one that does it. And little does that dude know at the gas station that witnessed to him. He's the one who planted the seed in that guy's mind, because he said, man, now that I said, are you going to turn me down like him, shoot me down? And he said, no, now that guy said something to me just the other day, random like this, now I know God's after me, and I know God wants me to give my life to him. So that guy probably went home that night and could have been totally discouraged, like, man, everybody I talk to about God just runs me off like that guy.
Yeah, and even if it wasn't like discouragement about everybody, just thinking that at least that experience, like that guy, like went completely poorly,
Yeah, man. But yeah, that's exactly right, man. Just even if he was thinking just that one went poorly, that guy will never know that he planted the seed. If he would have never spoke to the guy at the gas station, I would have been the first one talking to Chris about it in the car, and he would have told me, go on with all that Jesus stuff, man. I don't want to hear that. Just let me take you home, man. That's all I'm here to do. That would have been his, but instead that was the guy in the gas station's response, and God was gearing him up, getting him ready for me that would open my big mouth and tell him about Jesus too. So yeah. And how many times has that happened in your life, Calvin, or yours, Josh, or mine, whenever we thought that things that we were doing weren't yielding fruit or making a difference, or you might be wasting your time, or I don't see the change in this person's life, or I don't see, but God was working the whole time, and it might not be you that finishes with that person, but you started or put one of the building blocks that had to be there in that person's walk with God.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it was like that not too long ago at work. I met a guy, his name's Josh, by the way, and Asian dude. He was a metalhead like me, so we kind of like dealt together over music and stuff. He came into the shop and sold a bunch of his equipment, but just in conversation with the guy, like when I first met him, we were listening to sermons at the store, and he was like a hardcore Buddhist. So like he was just all about oh, you do what you do, I do what I do, like everything's cool. But then like after a while, he came in the second time he was visiting with us, and he just really kind of had this idea in his mind that he just wanted to find the truth, and like we've had talks, but they were like probably 5-10 minutes max, because like work and things like that. But after the second time we talked about like all types of like um either like little things about Jesus, like who he was a little bit. I will always kind of like try to steer the conversation that way. But he wasn't having it. So he would talk about like stuff that he was like philosophy and things that he was learning at the time, like often like contradicting like everything that I was saying. But I just really started to begin praying for this guy, and the first time like I actually started warring like for him on my knees instead of just trying to force the move myself and try to be like, I'm gonna be da 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 Captain Christian and get this guy saved. Like it's gonna be all me, through me, by me. Like, yeah, the Lord was like, dude, chill. So I actually started just going to the Father about it and praying for his heart and praying that the Lord would move. And like dude comes back after the last time I seen him. He was gone for like a year. Had no idea who he was, didn't come to the store for a long time. He recently came in. He had like his hair cut. He didn't smell like weed or anything. He was telling me how he found Christ at a big tent revival and came back to talk to me about it.
That's so sick.
It blew my mind. Because like in my head, I'm like, dude, this guy, like, as much as you like to believe, like, the Lord is gonna do something. With him, I'm like, Lord, I don't know if you're even wanting to do anything with this guy. Like, I have no idea where his heart is. I know you're mighty to save. I just don't know, will you do it? And he did.
Yes.
And like, my gosh, like I've been in contact with him ever since we met up last. But he was just telling me, man, like, dude, like, thank you so much for praying for me. Because I mentioned, like, dude, I prayed for you the last time you left, just like by myself with the Lord, asking for him to move on you. And dude, like, I didn't know it was going to take a year. The Lord did some serious work in that year where like the guy's faith is like, just, he's got roots, man. And he's speaking all of it like directly from the Bible out of his mouth. Like, he's citing scripture with me, at a King James Bible on him.
Wow.
And like the whole time I'm like in the store trying not to like backflip or like jump for joy, because I'm like, this is ridiculous.
That's hilarious, man.
Kelvin, can you backflip on flat ground?
I'm too heavy for that. I'm top heavy. I got small legs. I'll probably break something if I tried to do that. But if I could, best believe I would have.
I love that you brought up that passage, Jesse, about like one plants, one waters, where only God makes it grow. I'd say it was really maybe like 5-6 years ago that, for whatever reason, like it resonated with me for the first time ever. And I was just like, oh, dude, like I feel like I have like a pretty firm knowledge of the Bible, but like I guess I don't know. I just like looked past that every single time. Or it was just like I wasn't ready to receive it, Just like the thought came to mind where I was like, man, could I go the rest of my life walking in obedience to what God's calling me to if I never saw any fruit? I mean, to me, it's like icing on the cake whenever I do get to see any result. Very well, it could be that God forever is just like, yeah, Jesse, you're just a seed planter. And not just a seed planter, but you are a seed planter. That is your role in the kingdom. Are you willing to accept that, But the fact that God even lets any of us observe or like see any of the growth, like, is just like grace on grace on grace. Like to me, it's just like so much where I felt like for a very long time I functioned as though I had like the right to see growth, or like I had a right to see fruit bear out in my life, rather than just like really seeing it as like a complete privilege anytime God allowed me to see what he was doing, because it's just like I think about like the purpose of obedience is not to see a desired result, or even like the result that God desires, but like the purpose of obedience is really just like to play whatever part God is calling us to in whatever individual's life, whether that means we are forever planting seeds, or sometimes watering, or sometimes being that catalyst, like that God places us in that right situation at the right time, right when someone is ready and willing to receive, like what other people have planted and watered for forever,
No, amen, man. That even rolls back to the Uganda thing, man. One plants, one waters, like whoever it was that donated that other stuff. And even after what all what we talked about, it just kept growing from there. You know about Pastor Eddie's house and the other fundraisers and different things that have done after. And man, so much has come from that. And I told his church this one time. I said, if he would have been, if your pastor would have been like, dishonest or something, then man, I would have never, stayed in contact with him or anything like that. And I told him about how when he was in the U.S. and I heard two different people ask him, now that you see how nice the United States is, it was his first time ever in the United States. He was completely culture shocked. But now that you see how nice it is over here, do you want to live over here? And it was so funny. His response was the same both times, and he didn't even know I was listening. I was just overhearing. And he said, "Oh, the United States is obviously blessed by God, man, and God's hands on this nation, and everything is really nice." He said, "But God's called me to be a pastor over my church there in Uganda, and I would never leave there. So I would never, to answer your question, I would never like to live here." And I was just like, whoa. I shared that with his church, man, and man, they went crazy, dude. I'm talking about the ladies were like, yeah, because I was just telling him about how much he loves them, But yeah, man, it was so cool to see, one plants, one waters, God makes it grow, dude. God's done so much over there through so many people that I don't even know. I don't even know who they are, what they've done, how they contacted Eddie, what they've donated, what I don't even know, man. I find out things all the time and I still don't know. But it's just awesome, man. Like you said, do your part. Just do your part, even if it's seemingly small. The lady that couldn't give anything but knew someone who could, she ended up being my sister-in-law, man.
No way.
Yes, she's the one that at the time she just couldn't give anything, but she did not let that stop her own situation, stop God from using her to do her part.
Yeah. I mean, it would, I feel like there have been many times in my life that I probably would have been held back by pride in a similar situation and just been like, man, I really wish I could, but since I can't, I just got nothing, instead of actually recognizing that, like, oh yeah, like if I can connect them with someone who can, I don't need to be that person, That's huge.
Right, man. That's right.
It's like the beauty of the body actually being a body.
Yeah.
Like, you got some people, even like dude, myself included, I'm totally guilty of this. Like, there may be a time where like Jesus may call me to be a finger and I want to be like the whole arm. And
yeah, exactly.
And it can be a tough burden to bear, man. But like Christ has never called us. He never put that on our shoulders. He just wants our faith, like our faithful obedience, like in the moment, and through that, like he's able to put the pieces together however they need to fit.
This was another passage that just like, I don't know, hit me upside the head like hardcore. So it's like in John 4, Jesus is talking about like the harvest, but he's saying already the reaper draws his wages and gathers a crop for eternal life, so the sower and the reaper may rejoice together. For in this case the saying, one sows and another reaps, is true. And this was the one that like really did it. But he's talking to his disciples and he says, I sent you to reap what you have not worked for. Others have done the hard work, and now you've taken up their labor. But that was one that, like, I mean, you're talking about the story of the guy who gave you a ride and everything. That was like a passage that I was just like, holy crud, man. Like, that's true. Like, so many people that prepared the way for Jesus himself to come who did not see a bit of like the fullness of God in the flesh. So many people that, like, even in the Old Testament, who like walked in faithfulness and screwed up a lot along the way, but were like, God spoke into their life and he was like, I want to do this through you. Abraham, like, being the father of many nations, for instance. I mean, obviously he saw some descendants, but like he wasn't able to see the fullness, of what that meant. I don't know, just like that there are so many seeds that we will plant that we will never, ever, ever even imagine, like, what God has done with it, you know? Where it's like it could be a small thing, a small act of obedience that God's just like using at the right time in someone else's life. Where, I mean, I know that I've been like the recipient of that many times, where someone is just like, I don't know, reached out to me or like done something kind at the right moment. And, you know, like trying to be aware of that and acknowledge that when it does happen. But then there are other things that hit you like 10 years down the road where you're like, oh man, I really needed that at that point in time to keep me going, you know?
This, I know I probably told you this before, Josh, but this crazy thing happened to me so I get back from Uganda and I go back to work. And a lot of people are asking me, you know, about my trip and stuff. And me and this dude were always cool, man, up until this one thing that happened. So he was asking me about my trip, and this guy was like he looked like a bodybuilder. He did the weight competitions at work, and this dude was just huge, man. Me and him were always cool. I worked right beside him, and he would ask me questions like, "You went over there alone, man? That's crazy. You know, you weren't afraid somebody's gonna kill you or something?" And I was just like, you know, it crossed my mind, but I wasn't really afraid. But so we were all cool, and all of a sudden, man, just a few weeks after I get back, he's talking to me about this stuff. We were allowed to have radios, and he had the craziest music playing on his radio, and it was just dropping the F-bomb, like, I mean, over and over and over, turned up super loud. It was like right in my ear. So I asked him to turn it down, and he's like, "Nah, man, this is my song." And I was like, well, you know, I asked him again, so I went over there and turned down his radio. Dude, this guy just goes off, man. He's like, "You don't ever touch my bleepity bleeping radio." And from then on, he like hated my gut. I thought he hated my guts. So I was like, "Well, you know, I told you to turn it down," and, you know, and we just had it out right there. And, you know, me yelling at him and him yelling at me. And he was like, "You don't know me. I'll bust you right in your mouth," you know, and just all this stuff. And I told him this, though. I looked at him and I said, "You know what bothers you the most about me is that I'm not afraid of you. No matter what you tell me, no matter what you just said to me, I don't care what you're going to do to me. I don't care. I'm not afraid of you, and I'm not intimidated by you. I want you to turn that junk down." So, man, after I told him that, he turned it up even louder, dude. And he was like, "What, are you going to go to HR on me now?" And I was like, "No, I wouldn't do that to anybody." And I said, "But you just go ahead and just keep acting immature." And so he just kept being like that, wouldn't speak a word to me, went from talking to me all the time to just ignoring me. And so he left. He was about to leave Nissan, and he was taking the buyout package that our work was offering at the time. So this guy comes up to me, like, just less than a week. It was like his last week of working there. And I mean, months had went by. Like, this guy totally ignored me. Like, I thought he hated my guts. And he comes up to me with his head down, and he just says, "Jesse, man, I want you to pray for me before I leave Nissan." And I said, "Are you serious?" I said, "Are you serious?" And he said, "Yeah, man." He said, I want to be like you. I want to be as big as you." For some reason, it just sounded so weird to me coming from a big guy that I instantly said, "What are you talking about, man? You're twice the size I am." And then, dude, just as serious as could be, he goes, "Not inside, man. I'm not inside, but I want to be." And then he said, I want you to pray over me and my family," dude. I was like rocked to the core.
Dang.
I did not know at all that this guy felt this way about me. I thought that because I try my best. I'm not like the religious type that's going to tell you like that music's the devil, or I wasn't saying anything like that. All I wanted to do is to just have him turn it down. You know, I wasn't being condemning. I wasn't nothing, man. I was just like, just as cool as could be with your buddy. I was like, "Turn it down, man." And he was just would not. But when I touched that radio, something inside him, it triggered something inside him that I thought was hatred, man. And whatever it was, and I prayed with him, dude.
That's unreal.
It was a God moment, dude. I'm telling you.
Wow.
Anyways, man, that to me, man, was just like one of those moments where I thought I lost my witness with him. And I didn't want him to think that I was like thinking I was high and mighty or something, because I don't think like that at all. Like, not at all. Nothing in my mind's, thinking that, that dirty old sinner over there. Nothing in my mind was like that. I was just wanting the music down just, a bit from its loudest position. So God really worked his magic, dude, in that situation, man, because I did not know what he was about to say to me when he came up to me.
That's so sick.
I feel like it's so dope when reconciliation happens in times like that. And like clearly it was a Jesus thing, like because normally at the plant, I mean, when you're working at a plant, you get all different types of like personalities, characters, background stories, like everything. But in his particular case, man, like there was something about you being steadfast that convicted him on a core, where like he couldn't look at his, I guess, his physical stature to validate himself anymore. But it was something that he was looking for on the inside that he saw in you, or Christ shine through you, that he wanted for himself. And I feel like that's the way witness is supposed to be.
Man, thanks for that, Calvin.
We've been talking for a while, so we're gonna wrap up.
All right, bud. I love you guys. Thanks for having me on, man.
Yeah. Dude, thanks so much for sharing everything. Like,
yeah, man.
The thing that's just like brutally important for anyone to understand, just that instead of focusing so much on results or like, seeing God do something, just trusting that he is and trusting that like playing our part is simply obeying, and that, whether or not we see anything, either way, like it's not in vain, like he's not wasting anything that he's calling us to. And maybe that does just mean that he's building character or faith in us, and not necessarily that he's going to use that in a way that we ever anticipate.
Yeah.
But just trusting that either way he's got it.
Amen, dude. The Lord builds the kingdom one act of obedience at a time.
For sure. Is there any way that people can find out about Pastor Eddie's ministry?
Yeah, sure. On Facebook, he goes under the name Rural Empowerment because he empowers people in the rural areas of Uganda that are pretty much ignored. So you could become friends with me or message me and just let me know you're interested, and I'll connect you with them. But
yeah, we'll put a link in the description too.
Okay, thanks. All right, Calvin, you hold it down up there in Michigan. Josh, you hold it down in Pennsylvania, and I got the dirty South down here.
We're all covered.
Yeah.
All right, cousin. Appreciate you, man.
Lord bless you.
Good night.
See you, bud.
All right, peace out.
I love his stories. It feels like every time we talk to him, he always has like another one.
Yeah.
Or like another experience of like just something just crazy and out the ordinary. But I love like his takes on like his stance on a lot of things, even the stuff that he doesn't necessarily understand right away.
Yeah.
It's pretty challenging and like really encouraging to me.
I feel like when you're walking out in obedience, that's when you have those stories, Not that they're all going to look the same, but I would say that a lot of my story with Jesus earlier on was characterized by just getting caught up with analyzing like what effect something could have, and sometimes not acting because I felt like, all right, that's not really going to reap a big, result. I just kind of like getting caught up in my head of minimalizing things, thinking that they weren't going to have a big enough effect or something. And truly holding myself back from obedience, holding myself back from what God wanted to bring me into being a part of. When you're setting that aside and actually stepping out in obedience, that's when you see the things that are far beyond what you could ever imagine.
Amen, dude. Yeah, that's when the miracles start to happen, and you start to like experience God outside of your box, and you actually allow him to have the place that he rightfully is worthy of.
Yeah, for sure.
like with Josh, like in that whole story, like stuff like that happens. I'm like so blown away, but I'm like, I really shouldn't be blown away because this is the stuff he says that he's gonna do. Like,
Yeah.
I should be rejoicing more than I am just like, holy crap, Jesus actually did that. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, being like shocked because you like really revealing your unbelief in the first place.
I know, dude. What the heck?
Yeah, that's always humbling and eye-opening for sure. For anyone listening, I just encourage you to be obedient, not to analyze what the obedience could result in, or even seek out what that looks like, but instead just simply be obedient and trust that God's taking care of the details. And when he does actually open your eyes to what he's up to, rejoicing in that and being thankful that God actually did allow you to see what he's up to, instead of expecting it and thinking that it's your right to see what you've put your hands to. So yeah, this one was a little bit longer than I anticipated. If you've made it this far, we truly appreciate your time, as always. And if you want to hop on our website, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and you can also support us on Patreon. So thanks so much for your time, guys, and until next time.